Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Dev Ki Jai. Kali Yuga Dharma Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Welcome. Hare Krishna. This is like one of the last 2 nights for me of Sri Purushottam Mas, and we are amping up the sweetness as much as possible in these 2 days, trying to pack in as much as we can. I am already excited for tonight's reading. I've been excited for tonight's reading ever since I was thinking and pondering and praying about what to read, and then came upon this pastime just when I think we've covered so much sweetness. There's always more to be found. Krishna is the abode of all sweetness. He is Madhava. And his Vrindavan Dham is the ultimate playground for all love and sweetness. So we are going to journey there. All of us together. We're going to join hands, make a pact, try and make our way to that ultimate playground filled with loving pastimes where we can shake off everything else, in the day, in the week, in the month. Shake it all off and just have a chance to bathe in the nectarian pastimes of Shri Radha Krishna. But first, we can't possibly start our journey without singing Jai Radha Madhava. So we'll sing that and invoke the presence of Sri Vrindavan Dham, who is none other than an expansion of Lord Balaram, who wishes to serve his younger brother in every single way possible. And so he expands even as the land of Brajabhumi. He expands even as the desire for devotional service within the heart of each and every one of us. So let us count ourselves among the fortunate. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining in. Let us all together sing Jai Radha Madhava and invoke this wonderful, wonderful place called Vrindavan. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaradhari Jashodanandana Brajujan Ranjana Jamuna Tiravana Chari Jashodanandana Brajujan Ranjana Jamuna Tiravana Chari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Jai Radha Madhava Radhe Govinda Jaya Radhe Govinda Shri Radha Madhava ki jai Shri Radha Govinda Dev ki jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai Sri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. So my virtual Vasis, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining in. Thank you to whoever else is joining in. Thank you for letting your parents join in. Some of my friends are saying that their parents are even singing along. Thank you. This is an exciting time. This is a time for romance, for heroic adventures, for finding out what our best friend is going to do next, finding out what Radha Govinda are going to do next. Yesterday, we heard so many sweet things about how the gopis steal the flute, how they have their arch nemesis in the flute, and they're forever after that mischievous, crafty flute which draws them out of their houses. And today, we are going to find out what royal romance is taking place in Sri Vrindavan Dham. There are some things happening, and we get to be privy to those things. We get to have a sneak peek behind the curtain of majesty, into the very heart of our divine beloved. One spiritual teacher has said that in Vrindavan, this is God with his guard down. No longer is he just simply worshipped, but now we find that he is loved and adored, sometimes chaste, and sometimes lovingly chastised and scolded by those that also worship him. So for these past few days, we've been invoking the presence of Sri Purushottam Gopal Govindaji with this verse that Kondinya Muni has given us. Govardhana Dharam Vande Gopalam Goparupinam Gokulotsavamishanam Govindam Gopika Priyam. I worship Gopal, the lifter of Govardhan who has the form of a cowherd boy. He is the festival of Gokul and the supreme controller of all. He is Govinda and the beloved of the gopis. And of course, there is our benediction. By chanting this mantra with devotion during Sri Purushottam month, one will attain Sri Purushottam himself. One should devote the Purushottam month to constantly meditating on the two-armed form of Sri Krishna, who has the complexion of a new monsoon rain cloud, who plays the flute, who wears a yellow silk dhoti, and who is accompanied by Srimati Radharani. So, that verse leaves off with how Krishna is dressed and how he is a festival for Gokula. So we are going to be talking about those two things, the festivals of Gokul and how Krishna is dressed, and what his different dresses mean for these very particular and special festivals. Tonight's reading begins with a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. As we have been reading for the past few days from Venu Gita by His Holiness Sivarama Maharaj, this is again another excerpt from that pond of nectar that is Venu Gita. So we will be again reading from Venu Gita by His Holiness Sivarama Maharaj. And now we get to find out, what is this? Who is this boy that dresses up like this? And what are these festivals that he is the master of within Gokula, within Sri Vrindavan Dham? So this reading begins with a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Chapter 21, Text 12. Krishnam niriksha vanitotsavarupa-shilam Shrutva chatat kanita venu vivikta gitam Devyo vimana gataya smaranu nashara Brashat prasuna kabaram muhurvinivya. Krishna's beauty and character create a festival for all women. Indeed, when the demigods' wives, flying in airplanes with their husbands, catch sight of him and hear his resonant flute song, their hearts are shaken by Cupid, and they become so bewildered that the flowers fall out of their hair and their belts loosen. This is the effect that just seeing Krishna, sometimes hearing his flute song, has on everyone, anyone within earshot. Srila Prabhupada's translation and additional commentary to this verse in Krishna book is more expressive. In translating, Krishnam niriksha vanitotsavarupa shilam, he writes, Krishna is so nicely dressed that he appears to be the impetus to various kinds of ceremonies held by the women folk. These are the festivals. Ladies love a good festival. We will celebrate festival after festival after festival. We will find festivals throughout the year just to have something more to celebrate. Krishna is the impetus for all of these festivals. How wonderful is our best friend? The Brajbasis regularly perform traditional ceremonies as part of their rural lifestyle. Srila Prabhupada states that the incentive for the women to participate in these festivals is to see Krishna present there in his various mind-enchanting attire. The inhabitants of Vrindavan naturally dress in very colorful, traditional costumes. When they participate in some festival, their dress is even more exclusive, and Krishna, as the son of their king, adorned with his natural ornaments of beauty and character, stands out among them all. So Krishna is a very meticulous and snazzy dresser. I don't know if there's anybody who's a better dresser than Krishna. The gopis, who love Krishna with their hearts, attend these functions just to see him dressed in different ceremonial costumes. In this way, their love and happiness increases manyfold, and the thirst of their eyes and hearts becomes satiated. So we just think the many times when we go to the temple for different festivals just to see how the deities will be dressed, sometimes in an outfit made completely of flowers, sometimes in an outfit with a pastime as the backdrop, sometimes looking like spring personified, sometimes looking royal in velvet. This is the very same thing that the gopis of Vrindavan are yearning to see. This is why everybody goes to celebrate festivals, just to see what magnificent way Govinda will dress next. One festival takes place during the spring month of Falgun, February-March, when Sri Krishna, the Gopas and the Gopis, dressed in very colorful attire, appropriate to the season, participate in the spirited celebration known as Holi. Gathering in different parts of Vrindavan, accompanied by music and humorous, often abusive language, the boys challenge the cowherd girls and partake in a contest of throwing colored substances on each other. The attractive feature of Sri Krishna's customary dress is further enhanced by multicolored powder covering his hair and visage, and the greater visibility of his wet limbs. The gopis become blissful to participate in such frivolity and enhance their eyes by seeing Sri Krishna engaged in that way. Another festival which takes place at the behest of Nanda Maharaj is the well-advertised sacrifice performed by the sadhus of Braj for the protection of Balaram and Sri Krishna. Dhani Krishna, dressed as the tax collector of Govardhan, obstructs the path of the gopis. On the pretext of taking ghee to the sacrifice, Radharani and her Sakis majestically walk from Radha Kund, carrying golden pots on their heads. At Danagati, Krishna is dressed like a tax collector, with his constables in toll station. When she sees him from a distance, Radharani says to Lalita, "Sakhi, although I have seen Sri Hari on innumerable occasions, I have never seen him dressed in such a charming way before." After a long debate regarding the tax due from the gopis, Krishna allows them to finally continue on their way. The most wonderful festival of Sri Radha's coronation was the cause of Sri Krishna dressing as the chief constable of Braj, and in a mind-enchanting costume, he traveled throughout the land, proclaiming the sovereignty of his very own beloved. At the request of Srila Rupa and Raghunath Goswamis, Srila Jiva Goswami narrated this story in his Madhava Mahotsava, the festival of Madhava, the great festival of sweetness. So are we ready to hear about this Madhava Mahotsava? One day, in a secluded grove not far from Nandagram, Sri Krishna met with the goddess Vrindadevi and devised a scheme by which Sri Radha would be glorified by Brijbasis and demigods alike. Although the goddess of fortune reigns throughout the three worlds, being pleased with Sri Radha, Sri Hari desired to make her the queen of his own home. On that day, Vrindadevi, who is none other than the presiding goddess of Vrindavan, and so it is named after her, who is none other than Tulsi Maharani. So on that day, Vrindadevi manifests a divine voice which echoed throughout all of Braj. Vrindadevi has innumerable mystical abilities. She can make anything appear at any time for the pleasure of the pastimes of Sri Radha Govinda. So, on this day, she has made a divine voice boom from the skies. So at the beginning of this Purushottam month, we heard quarreling over who was the real king or queen of Vrindavan. And Sri Radha said, upon my coronation, I was reigned queen, so clearly I own Vrindavan and its gardens. So now we'll hear about that coronation. So on that day, Vrinda Devi manifest a divine voice which echoed throughout all of Braj. Addressing Purnamasi in a voice like thunder, it said, O Queen of Yogis, quickly bathe Sri Radha, who is the Chandra Lakshmi throughout the land, who is the Chandra Lakshmi, the lunar goddess of beauty, arisen from the ocean of matchless attributes, upon a jewel-studded golden throne in universally praised Vrindavan. So we remember Purnamasi is none other than Krishna's internal potency, his own Yoga Maya, expanded as an elderly gopi who knows everything and anything there is to know in Vrindavan. So this voice from the sky is now directing her. O Queen of Yogis, quickly bathe Sri Radha, who is Chandra Lakshmi, the lunar goddess of beauty, arisen from the ocean of matchless attributes. Bathe her upon a jewel-studded golden throne in universally praised Vrindavan. Just as the rays of the moon nourish the entire earth, so the luster of Sri Radha's Abhishek will bring matchless good fortune to Braj, Gokul, and to the whole world. By this act alone, love will be spread to everyone. Therefore, do not hesitate. Then, in the presence of the awestruck Brijbasis, that ethereal voice instructed Shai Radhika to accept the royal bathing ceremony. O Radha, do not hesitate to act boldly for the welfare of your kinsmen and Vrindavan. By this action, you will destroy unlimited misery of the world and bestow supreme charity upon all. After all, even the most reserved maidens must give up their shyness when they finally accept a husband. So Sri Radha would normally not be given a public bathing ceremony. She would be quite shy. But in this case, this voice from the sky is telling her, be bold. Be bold, and this act of yours, this Abhishek, will give pleasure to the entire creation. When Sri Radha heard that nectarian message, she embraced her friends, while the Brijbasis made ecstatic noises and played musical instruments. When Kundalata announced the news throughout Braj, the happiness of Sri Krishna knew no bounds. On the appointed day of the coronation, all moving and non-moving creatures stood transfixed, enchanted by Sri Radhika's celestial beauty as she ascended the golden, jeweled bathing platform, illuminating the whole of Vrindavan with her own golden luster. Many goddesses from heaven and Vrindavan, like Kalindi, Ekanangsa, Rudrani, and Shachi, were present in human forms. By the order of Purnamasi, the sacred waters of Manasi Ganga, the Jamuna, and the Saraswati appeared in scented, jeweled jugs. Many other golden containers filled with ghee, milk, and yogurt decorated the area. The combined bathing appeared like many streams of nectar flowing down a golden mountain of heavenly bliss to an effulgent lake of liquid love. When that lake overflowed its bejeweled shores, it extended its influence to the many oceans of the world and hence to all beings. All the while the Sakis chanted Jai, Jai, sang wonderful Brijbasi songs and danced with great joy. Their happiness pervaded the entire ceremony, just like sunshine. After the bathing was complete, the gopis dried Sri Radha's delicate limbs, dressed her in royal robes, and decorated her with costly ornaments and scented flowers. Sometimes we think of Vrindavan as a village, a forest village, with very, very simple ornaments. But here we see that Srimati Radha is dressed in royal robes, decorated with costly ornaments. All of these Brijabasis were wealthy beyond compare, wealthy beyond our wildest imaginings. They had jewels of all kinds, gold, diamonds, all kinds of riches. So they would dress themselves not just with costly silks and costly fabrics, but with jewels and flowers. Seated on a bejeweled throne, surrounded by her Sakis, Sri Radha appeared like the empress of divine love who rules the hearts of all purified souls. When the younger sister of Sri Krishna, Ekanamsa Devi, placed Sri Radha's Raj Tilak on her forehead, she exclaimed, "Jai Vrindavaneshwari!" At this, the choruses of Jai, Jai, the blowing of conches, the sound of the many instruments, and the uludwani of the gopis caused the demigods to pour a shower of flowers which resembled a heavenly downpour of bliss. Who is this Ekanangsha Devi, Krishna's younger sister? So it says that she appeared there along with others like Kalindi, Rudrani, and Shachi. So we have to understand that these are like the goddesses like Parvati and like the goddess Durga. All of them were present. Shachi is the wife of Indradev. So they all arrived. All of these wonderful celestial goddesses appeared just to perform the Raj Rani Abhishek of Srimati Radhika. While the inhabitants of Braj looked on, all the goddesses declared their allegiance and offered gifts to their queen. How sweet is this? Savitri presented Radhika with a lotus garland. Shachi Devi presented a golden throne. Riddhi, many ornaments. Gauri Devi, a golden scepter. Lord Shiva himself, a white whisk. Swaha, a fine sari. And Drumara, a jeweled mirror. Meanwhile, all the demigods of heaven played dundubi drums, sang in jubilation, and danced. What a wonderful festival this was! When the demigods dispersed and the ceremony was complete, Sri Radha and her many Sakis retired to a majestic grove to allot responsibilities for the kingdom. After the gopis had been allocated various services and the government posts were occupied, anxious Shyam Sundar submitted his desires to the Prime Minister, Lalita Devi. In great ecstasy, Lalita told Sri Krishna, "O Vanamali, everyone has been allotted their services according to their liking. Please tell me what service you desire to render the queen, for I cannot find any upon which to write your name." Hearing this, Sri Krishna said with great enthusiasm, "I have a very important service I shall offer the Queen of Braj. I desire to be the chief constable and wander throughout the land announcing the sovereignty of our queen." "If that is your desire," replied Lalita, "then you must write a letter of application, which will be considered for its suitability." Krishna has to apply for the position. Composing the following letter to the queen, Shyam writes, "All glory to the lotus feet of the crown jewel of clever girls, who is served by all the monarchs of the world, who is the empress of Vrindavan, the abode of all power and the very life of her friends. Standing before you with folded hands, I beg you, accept me as your servant and give me the job of chief constable. Every day and every night I will announce your glories from village to village. If any thief dares to enter the kingdom, I shall ensure he fails in his purpose. While performing this service, I will constantly sing, Jai Jai Vrindavaneshwari ki Jai. This is Govinda's own application. This is his love letter to the Queen of Vrindavan. When the Sakis offered their recommendation to the Queen, Sri Krishna receives the post of Chief Constable and is issued his uniform, ornaments, and suitable implements. Sri Krishna wears a turban of many colors decorated with feathers and gunja beads, an embroidered jacket, and a golden dhoti. All of my artist friends, I implore you, take this description into your hearts. If I could meditate on this description forever and ever, I would. If there is one thing that we desire to see, it is this. So, Krishna wears a turban of many colors, decorated with feathers and gunja beads, an embroidered jacket, and a golden dhoti. In his purple sash is placed a jeweled dagger. On his broad chest, he wears a sheriff's medallion, and in his hand a golden rod of punishment. Dressed in this way, Sri Hari appears like Yamaraj in the form of the ever-fresh Cupid of Braj Dham. As he wanders throughout Vrindavan, all living entities feast their eyes on his beautiful dress, youthful movements, and sweet smile while he proclaims. Are we ready to hear the proclamation of the Chief Constable of Braj? O animals, birds, bees, trees, vines, sky, and wind of Vrindavan, listen to me, the official representative of the throne upon which the daughter of King Vrishabhanu now sits as the heavenly empowered Queen of Vrindavan. From today, you have no other queen and no other mistress, say I, a lowly servant at her lotus feet. Hearing this sweet proclamation of their constable, all creatures of Vrindavan coo, warble, or hum in happiness. Since Sri Radha is their eternal mistress, they have long given their hearts to her. Now, caught up in the waves of his ever-expanding bliss, they reconfirm their allegiance to the Queen and ride the moods of Sri Krishna's ecstasy. This is the real meaning of Independence Day. Let us all pledge our allegiance to Sri Vrindavaneshwari Radha. Sri Vrindavaneshwari ki Jai. At the completion of his first round of duty, the enchanted constable reported the news to the Queen. With a beatific smile, Sri Krishna happily confirmed the universal submission of her subjects and their satisfaction with her new rule. To increase the nectar of his pastimes, because Krishna is always Krishna. Let us see what our mischievous boy will do next. To increase the nectar of his pastimes, unbeknown to anyone else, Sri Krishna hid his flute in Lalita's veil. Looking like the very emblem of innocence, pleading for shelter, he complained to the Queen about the theft. Lotus-eyed Vishaka said, "This is good news. That miserable little flute which destroys the chastity of Braj's housewives has disappeared. Finally, we can sleep peacefully at night and find happiness in our homes." Srimati Radhika said, "Saki Vishake, our kingdom will not prosper if common knowledge has it that theft is an accepted practice here." Prime Minister Lalita was irate at the incompetence of the constable and demanding his resignation said, "How can we employ a constable who cannot protect his own property? What to speak of the property of others? To maintain the integrity of the Queen and the throne, he should resign immediately." Lalita is always after Krishna. She's always finding some way to chastise him. Smiling mischievously, the constable submits to the lotus feet of Maharani this appeal. O goddess, you decide whether I am at fault or not. Being a low-ranking official, what can I do if one of the royal executives has exerted the influence of her office to misappropriate my little flute? Hearing this, Prime Minister Lalita immediately orders, everyone, open their veils and show the constable whether you have his flute. That corrupt official who is in the possession of this constable's flute will be severely punished. Uh-oh. Everyone follows the Prime Minister's order, and finally, Lalita opens her own veil, and lo and behold, out falls the mischievous flute. The queen and her ministers and officials are all stunned. The constable says, aha! Just see, O queen, the corruption that has filtered into the highest offices of your court. Such a chief minister should immediately resign, lest the news become public and the good name of the kingdom go to ruin. Lalita Devi's rage knew no bounds. It was only her oath of office that kept her from thrashing the constable. She had to hold herself back from hitting Krishna. This is what Krishna loves. The intensity of pastimes were in which now the devotee somehow has to hold themselves back from thrashing the Lord. What is this? This is the nectar and the beauty of Sri Vrindavan Dham. With quivering lips and a flushed face, she said, you have hidden the flute in my clothes to defame me and usurp the position of Prime Minister. Only someone of your crooked habits could understand what devious ends you have in mind. Looking like a virtuous subject wrongly accused, Sri Krishna raised his eyebrows as Lalita Devi continued, you are the culprit. Of that I am sure. Do you dare deny it by taking an oath at the Queen's lotus feet? The ministers all agreed that a deposition at the lotus feet of the Empress would be accepted as conclusive evidence. Reaching forward towards the throne, his eyes filled with tears, his body studded with goose pimples, the constable's hands shivered in ecstasy as they touched Sri Radha's lotus feet. This is what Sri Krishna has wanted all along. Although Sri Krishna is the very form of rasa, he was enchanted by the flavor of transcendental love that is Sri Radha. His voice choked from inertia, his body shivered like a leaf, and currents of ecstasy surged through his very being. Seeing her beloved shaking in ecstasy, Sri Radha laughed sweetly and held his hand, saying, O Nilamani, which Nilamani is such a sweet name for Krishna, my bluish jewel. O Nilamani, please let me reveal what is on my mind. You have made me dance as your puppet, and by your desire, I have become queen of this land. O Govinda, I too have a solitary desire. Give up the dress of a constable, and accepting the dress of royalty, come sit on the throne with me. At this request, Vrinda Devi presented Sri Krishna with a beautiful regal dress, divine ornaments, and an emperor's crown. Donning his attire, Sri Krishna ascended the bejeweled throne and sat on the right side of Sri Radha, while the Sakis made the ulu ulu sounds and their servants fanned. The peacocks and peahens danced, the parrots and sharikas sang, and the honeybees and their wives flew about. The trees, creepers, and animals of Braj seeing the unlimited sweetness of the divine couple dressed as the king and queen of Vrindavan, and accompanied by the Sakhis who played musical instruments, sang in chorus, Jai Radhe Sham, Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Sham. Sri Vrindavan Dham ki Jai. Shri Radha Govinda Dev ki Jai. Sri Vrindavaneshwari Shri Radha ki Jai. This is the abundant sweetness of the festivals that happen throughout Vrindavan. This is how Krishna is an absolute festival for Gokula. This is how we meditate on him who dresses in a variety of different ways just to enchant the minds of his devotees. Sometimes dressing as a tax collector, sometimes dressing as a boatman, sometimes dressing as a Brahmin or Pujari for the sun salutations that Sri Radha must perform, and sometimes dressing as the chief constable within the kingdom of the one supreme empress, Srimati Radharani, and at other times dressing as the very emperor of Vrindavan, as Srimati Radharani's own king, Sri Govinda Dev himself. All glories to our divine couple, and all glories to them who drown their devotees in waves of ecstatic symptoms due to their merciful, merciful pastimes. One day, when we close our eyes, these will not just be words, but they will be visions that we will behold within our hearts. They will ensnare us. We will journey to Vrindavan, and from there, never return. I hope that we all join hands. We all go there as quickly as possible, and we take as many people with us as we can. This was the exciting reading for today. How Sri Krishna became the chief constable, and how Srimati Radharani was coronated as Queen of Vrindavan. How Sri Govindaji had to submit his own application into the service of Sri Radha. How he was accepted into the service of Sri Radha. And how he appeased her with the sweetest words in all of creation. This is how Govinda will submit himself just to the lotus feet of his queen. This is my Govinda. This is our Lord of unlimitedly sweet pastimes. This is our best friend. This is God, our divine being with his guard down. Not just here to maintain universes, not just here to maintain countless living entities, but ultimately, what does he desire? To submit himself to the service of the lotus feet of his very own queen. This is the nectar that we live off of. This is the nectar that we are always anxious for. I hope that these pastimes have filled your heart with joy and a beautiful solace and peace. We are always, always, always looking for some remedy to all of the miseries of this world, and we have found it right here in these pastimes, filled with unparalleled sweetness, Parama Madhura, unparalleled, unprecedented, supreme sweetness. This is our Lalita Madhava, charming Madhava, the charming Lord of sweetness. Thank you all so much for joining me. I want to just end on that sweet note. Let us all either go to sleep or continue with the rest of our days with this meditation in mind. Sri Krishna dresses in an array of different festival wear just to give pleasure to our hearts. His goal is just one: loving pastimes with his devotees, which are all of us, thankfully. Tomorrow, we will have our last night of Sri Purushottam Mas narrations, where we will try and find the ultimate limit of sweetness. We'll see what else Radha Govinda want to reveal. But for tonight, this was such a beautifully sweet pastime. Thank you all for being with me. I can't wait to see you all again tomorrow. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Dev Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Vaishnav Sangha Ki Jai. All glories to all of you and your enthusiastic hearts. Thank you for making me so enthusiastic to speak. Thank you so much. See you all again soon. Hare Krishna.